Continuing our reading in Abraham Hannibal and the Raiders of the Sands by Francis Summers Cox. This episode is Chapter 2, Son of the Lord of the Sea. Slowly, Abraham opened his eyes, but he closed them again straight away. His head hurt terribly, and he felt stiff and sore all over. My son, can you hear me? It was the voice of his mother, Makeda. He tried opening his eyes again. Thank goodness the light was very dim. They were in his mother's hut. She was bending over him very close, wiping his forehead with a wet cloth. He wasn't lying on his usual cow skin on the floor, but actually up on the clay bed. What happened with the elephants? He whispered. You fell into the Mereb, and the old leader fell in right after you. She was sick. The pain in her face must have driven her mad to make her stray so far from home. She fell all the way down to the riverbed. What a young hothead you are. Smiling down at him, his mother fingered the silver cross that he had worn on a string around his neck since he was christened at 40 days old. Someone in heaven must have been looking after you. You landed on a bushy ledge a little way down. When the herd saw their leader dead, they lost courage and soon headed away, back down toward the wild lands. Some of your brothers saw it all. You were very brave. Does Father know? He knows. He was here when you were unconscious. He'll be back soon. He's very proud of you. Abraham smiled and then whispered, What about Lahia? I'm here, said his sister's voice, and she came up out of the shadows. Little brother, I thought I had lost you. Thank goodness and Our Lady that you are safe. And she knelt on the bed to hug him. Lahia, Beauty, lived up to her name. Like her brother and her mother, she was very dark-skinned, and she was often teased for it. But no one could tease her for her huge dark eyes, her smooth oval face, and her ready, cheerful smile. Her mother's hair would never grow quite long enough to brush out properly at the ends of the braids she wore plaited back along her head. But Lahia looked a real young lady, with her plaits ending in a lovely black cloud that floated at the back of her neck. That night, Abraham lay restless and sweating in the chilly winter air, unable to sleep. Rain dripped through the gaps in the grass roof. Why hasn't Father come yet? Why hasn't he come? Why hasn't he come? Mother, my son, tell me the story again. Which story? Smiled his mother, although she knew. Of how Father met you. She came and sat next to him and wrapped them both up in her white cloak. And Lahia sat at the end of the bed and listened too. Long ago, in days long gone by, the Lord of the Sea was hunting down in the wild lands where it is hot as the devil's home, and men do not know Jesus and the saints. It was a mighty hunt. The spears of the Lord of the Sea and his warriors dripped with blood. They came upon a great herd of elephants, and many were the tusks of ivory they carried off that day. Leopards were slain in plenty. Now their skins adorn the shoulders of the brave. A score of lions died, and the mightiest princes in the land now wear their manes. And they hunted my people too. 28 children of the Kunama, the slave people, were taken from my own village, near where the waters of the Mereb begin to die in the dryness of the plains. Sing us the children's song, Mother. And Makeda sang the sorrowful song of the children of her people. They come and catch us by the waters of the Mereb. They make us slaves. Our mothers in fear flee to the mountains and leave us alone in strange lands. Makeda's voice began to tremble, and she stopped. The three of them stayed silent a moment, and then she went on with the tale. The warriors fell on our village like a thundercloud. What a screaming and wailing there was, what a rushing into the hills. Men and women ran to save themselves, and the slowest and the youngest were caught. They were rounded up with whips and their hands tied with ropes. Only the old folk were left. One girl hid in a pile of wood, pulled an old skin over her head, and peeped out from under it. Then she saw one man who had not fled. It was her father. Slowly, silently, with a knife in his hand, he was creeping through the shadows, through the trees round our village, to where the Lord of the Sea stood and watched his warriors collect their booty. "My father?" said Abraham, although he knew. His mother nodded. Suddenly, the girl's father dashed out of the shadows and lunged at the Lord, but he was too slow. The Lord of the Sea swung around, smashed the knife out of his hand, and tripped him to the ground. He stood over the body, placed one foot on his chest, and raised his spear high. Then from out of the woodpile burst the girl. She ran across the clearing, and with a great cry of "Stop!" she threw herself over the body of her father. She twisted around to look up at the spear that pointed at her throat, and saw the face of her enemy looking down at her. The sharp point wavered. The enemy stepped back. The Lord of the Sea upended his spear and stuck the handle in the earth. "Stand up," he commanded. The girl and her father rose trembling. "Is this your daughter?" asked the Lord of the Sea. The kunama looked straight at him in the eyes. "She is." "You are free to go, but your daughter is to become my wife. She will be treated with honor." And so the girl left the wild lands forever and lived on the high tableland in the land of the Christians. She was christened with the name Makeda, and she became the youngest of the wives of the Lord of the Sea. And they had a wise and lovely daughter called Lahia, and a crazy, brave boy named Abraham. And they all lived happily ever after, chanted Lahia, with a sparkle in her eyes. But her brother was breathing evenly now, ready for sleep. That's the end of chapter 2.